This is such a rich topic. We'll see how much we can cover. And I've already thought that I had such a good time with this that I may need to come back to it because there's so much here to talk about for this topic. In that first video that I released on Monday, when I just introduced the topic, I mentioned that there is no one right formula to forgiveness, that everyone has their own methods, everyone has their own wisdom, and this is something that's unique to each person, how you move through this process. And it is a process of peeling away the layers a little bit at a time, as much as you can. And I'm going to come back to that. The challenging part, I think, for most of us with forgiveness is resisting or accepting that what happened. Oof, that's the really tough part for a lot of us, for the big things that are tougher to forgive. And we have to find our own way to exist in some sort of state of resolution with what happened. So I would love to hear your stories. When has forgiveness been the toughest for you? When is it easy? What makes the difference? Feel free to interrupt and pop those in as you think of them, and I'll respond to those that come in when we're live as I can, and all the ones that are posted later. We'll go back and chat with you all, because actually this is pretty fun. I had more fun with this than I thought I would, because of course this is a challenging topic and a triggery one, and I had a great time pulling together my resources, other resources. I have a lot of fun stuff to share. So we can make something as tough as forgiveness fun, hey, we're on the right track. I'm assuming that you're here or you're watching because you're curious. Curiosity is an indication of some level of readiness to forgive. Congratulations for that part. That's the first step, is just being ready or curious to, can I let this go? I don't know if I want to, but what is this about, and at what level can I let this go? I'll just say right off the bat that you deserve the freedom that comes from loosening the attachment to this thing, whatever it is for you. Let's get curious together and look at this. First, I want to clear the air. Some of our resistance to the concept of forgiveness comes from the limiting belief that forgiveness has to mean condoning what happened. It does not. Does not. Forgiveness does not have to mean condoning what happened. This is a healthy boundary to set. You've got to know what's right and what's wrong for you. You don't have to approve of what happened. Lori says, forgiving my sister and ex-husband for their hand in taking my daughter away. Ooh, thanks for your courage in bringing up something meaty. Yeah, and we've all got these deep, meaty things, these wounds. That was the hardest. Forgiving my son for not talking to me for almost a year was much easier. Interesting. I'd love to hear what you feel made the difference, because, geez, those are both really tough. Those are both wounds. Let us know what made the difference and what helped you. This is what this is about. It's a brainstorm. I'm going to share a whole bunch of resources, and you all are excellent resources. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on this are and how you've navigated it. And giving you permission to not have to approve of what happened. Know that forgiveness does not mean giving permission for people to walk all over you. This is not about that. Boundaries are important, and they often need reestablishing as we go throughout our lives. So it's something that we have to come back to, but the healthy boundary needs to always be there. This does not mean just opening yourself up and saying, hey, keep doing your damage. That is not what forgiveness is. Let me ask you, what do you see as the difference between setting a healthy boundary and holding someone hostage for their infractions? Leave that one out there. For those of you who have thoughts on that, I'm going to repeat it and type in your thoughts. What is the difference between setting a healthy boundary and holding someone hostage for their infractions? And I'll go back to Lori. She says the difference for her was she loves her son and she could forgive him for anything. Yeah, that beautiful capacity for nurturing as a mother, that mother energy. Yeah, it's easy. We really want our loved ones close, and especially that bond between a mother and child. It's interesting to see where we have those lines. Does it depend on how easily we can detach what was done from who did it? You're so smart. The difference, perhaps, between setting a healthy boundary and holding someone hostage for their infractions, this is a grudge thing. This is where we hold grudges, right? So let's mark a difference between forgiving the act and forgiving the person. Now, you don't even have to forgive the person, but could you consider forgiving the energy that created the act? So we can even space this out into three things. It's easiest perhaps to just forgive the act itself. Maybe it's easier for people to forgive the energy that created the act rather than forgiving the person. Sometimes that's the tough thing. Where do you hold those boundaries? What is easier to forgive? The act, the person, the energy that created the act? I think it is more holding yourself hostage for not forgiving. We're so going to come back to that. Yes, that's a beautiful point. Because really this is about us. Does the other person always know that we're not forgiving them? Are they always thinking about us and what we're doing? They might not be thinking about us. So I think on some level, no, they don't know. This is really about us. And there's an energetic component to it as well that I'm going to touch on a little bit later. When you decide to stop becoming a victim, it is easier to forgive. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to come back to how this places us in a victim role, Lori. Thank you. You don't have to forgive the act. That can be where the boundary is. Forgiveness also does not mean that you have to allow that person back in your life. You don't have to do that. This can be an internal shift with the external boundary of thank you very much, and you can stay over there. I'm cool. We're cool. And I'm going to focus over here now. True forgiveness is letting go of that tension that keeps that person's infraction bound to you. Just like a lot of what I coach with my clients, the difference is in the energy behind it. A healthy boundary is a loving act. It has the energy of compassion, confidence, respect, kindness. Whereas keeping a grudge holds the energy of tension, anger, bitterness. How is this resonating so far? Thoughts on this? Let me know. Still would love to hear those stories of where it was easy to forgive, where it was tougher, and what makes the difference. And I'll keep rolling on and catching comments as they come in. Holding someone else responsible for your suffering, holding yourself responsible for your suffering. This is such a fun conversation. It's really so varied. Lori says, not forgiving someone is usually what you are upset about in yourself. What you did or didn't do and what you allowed to happen. Totally coming back to that also. Yes, there's so much to talk about with this. I really had a good time looking at this subject. I really did. It's so much fun. I'm going to move on. One way to look at the layers of forgiveness, I talked about this can release in soft layers a little bit at a time when you are ready, as much as you can at a time. One way to look at that is to think about the roles that people play in your life. Some people are villains. Some people are there to support us. Some people are on our side. And life is life, and plot twist, sometimes those roles switch. Acknowledging that there are roles, that there are roles that people play in our lives, that normalizes why it's okay to keep some people here and some people over here and have that boundary. Just calling out some thoughts to wrap our heads around this rather meaty concept of forgiveness. One way is knowing that people play roles in our lives, and that is normal. That is normal. Ooh, here's a challenging one. Have you heard this? People are only doing the best that they can with the resources they have available. Really tough one. The first time I heard that, someone shared that with me in relation to something I was having a very hard time forgiving, and I was pretty mad hearing that. Like, oh no, that was not that person doing their best. That was not their best. They know way better than that, blah blah blah. I was super up in my energy about that. That was not that person's best. Wow, I was pretty judgmental about that. And I was judging them by my own standards. Maybe I wouldn't have done that, but clearly they were capable. That concept that people are doing the best they can with their life experiences, everything they know, everything that had brought them to this point, they're doing the best that they can with what they know and what they want. Just their best may not be your best. There's a difference. It's another way to peel back a layer of this forgiveness. Have you seen that meme that life becomes easier when you accept an apology that you never got? I love that meme. Now, why is that hard? Life becomes easier when you accept an apology you never got. Why is it hard? Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting for them to apologize? What is it that is so tough about that? It may have been their best, but it wasn't their best for me, so it's time to move on. Yeah, great. Healthy boundary setting. It's all related, isn't it? Appreciate and understand their world. When you can better understand someone else's reasons behind some behaviors, it makes it easier to let go. That is about forgiving the energy behind the act. That's where compassion comes in, where you can see their own wound. Thank you for that, Lori. Why is it hard? Why are we waiting for their apology? Because the pain needs to be heard. Can we just appreciate that for just a second? Because the pain needs to be heard. Now, we think we're waiting for them to acknowledge that pain. But if we're doing that, we might be waiting for a while. Again, they may not even be thinking about us. We might not be the most important thing in their world, obviously. If we're waiting for them to honor our pain, we might be waiting a while. Can we first honor our own pain? That anger and blame keeps us playing victim. Thank you, Lori. Keeps us playing victim to them. They're still in control when we're doing that. Ugh, we don't want that. We can honor our own pain here. Hear ourselves for what we went through, what it felt like. Anything goes here when we do that. Take the time that you need to feel what you need to feel. Don't make yourself wrong for what you feel. Give it a space. Allow it to be heard. If it's still being loud and waiting for something, we might think we're waiting for them to clean this up for us. But maybe we need to take the reins and hear ourselves out. as long as that takes. Give that act of compassion to yourself. Now that can look a number of different ways. So I want to share one resource. There's going to be a bunch of resources coming. This is a resource that I stumbled upon through the work of a couple of my coaches. Super neat resource called the Compassion Key. This is developed by a gentleman named Edward Mannix, and I am not certified yet to teach it. And I have gotten to experience it a couple times with those coaches. Really neat tool to really embrace the deep well of compassion and give that to ourselves first. It's pretty neat. So Compassion Key, Edward Mannix, when you want to explore that further. Another way to peel back the layer of this forgiveness is to consider where you can take even the tiniest bit of responsibility. Not 100%. Don't have to do that yet. We're starting small here, little bits at a time. Where can you take just 10% of the responsibility for what happened? Give that other person the 90. You can peel that away when you're ready, but sure, give them the whole 90. Where can you just take the tiniest little bit of responsibility for the energy you brought into the situation, for whatever was leading up to what happened on your end? Lori says we need to acknowledge our own pain and love ourselves enough to let go of it. Yeah, I think you'd like the Compassion Key. It's pretty neat stuff. Someone once said that the best revenge is happiness. Oh, I love that one. Maybe looking at it as the energy of revenge doesn't quite hit the mark, but the concept of that point, absolutely in agreement. Yeah, focusing on our own selves. And I think first we've got to hear that pain. We've got to give ourselves the compassion, heal that. And then there's that space, that freedom for happiness. Oh, isn't it amazing that forgiveness is related to happiness? Surprise, surprise, surprise. Not caring what someone else thinks is important. I did a talk about that as well. What we think should be the most important. Yeah, I agree. What others think of us is none of our business. Jane says, I need to define myself not through someone else's view of me, but through my own acceptance of who I am and allow myself to have compassion for me. What a neat concept, to not define ourselves through someone else's view. Yeah. Why are we wasting our energy doing that? Isn't that funny when you break it down that way? Thank you. Thank you for writing that out. I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, that's brilliant. If you find a piece of bitterness still lingering with all the work that you've done, and you're looking at this outer stuff, it might be that it's time to consider that the piece that remains is forgiveness of self. And that's where that compassion comes in too. But maybe we did ourselves an injustice somewhere along the line. We can look at, where did you abandon yourself in this process, in this experience? This is so multi-layered. This is so rich and so deep. There's so much here to play with, and that forgiveness of self is a huge part of it. You're more in the equation than you think you are. I think we've talked about that even here, just how this is really an internal thing. Here's the reframe, and maybe looking at the other side of the pain, in pondering those past experiences and looking at how they have created the depth and the beauty of the amazing being that you are today. Let go of making that past wrong or bad. And you can take on seeing it as an ingredient in the unique recipe of you. It's making you who you are. And a lot of that has some beauty. Here's a lovely question to think about in relation to forgiveness. How are you a light in someone else's life because of what happened to you? I'm going to say that again. How are you a light in someone else's life because of what happened to you? Did it give you this piece of wisdom that you were able to share with someone else suffering a similar experience, and then you were their rock? Because of what happened to you, you were able to empathize with someone else. You were able to relate. You were able to stand up for someone. You learned how to set boundaries, and so have been able to model healthy boundary setting for someone else because of what happened to you. Now, wow, that is when so much can open up for us from this very wounding, painful situation. And I will give you a little insight that one of the hardest things in my life so far to forgive, what has offered me the best reframe, I'm even getting a little bit of tears behind my eyes, is thinking and acknowledging, recognizing, owning how it has truly made me a gift for other people because specifically of the depth of that pain. I've been able to really be there for other people. Kelly says, I love that. Such a gift to use the past pain to help someone else now. Yeah, me too. You've known me long enough that you know many of my stories of pain and forgiveness. My stepmother, my ex that beat me when I was raped. Forgiving them and myself was crucial to healing. Yeah. And gee, did that make you courageous or what? Bowing down to your courage here this morning, Lori. You're such a light because you're able to share. You're able to call it what it is. You're able to say, because of this, I am strong. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. When you can see the ways in which you have emerged more beautiful, there's that other layer of forgiveness. You can even say, thank you for making me who I am. Because of that experience, I am blank, whatever it might be. Forgiveness is not something you can force. Can I just call that out right now? I mentioned in the beginning that if you're curious about forgiveness, that's a great sign that there's a level of readiness. And geez, don't pummel yourself about this. This is something that unfolds little by little when you are ready. Again, it's not that on and off switch. This is forgiveness of the other, forgiveness of the act, forgiveness of the energy that created the act, forgiveness of the self as much as you can in each given moment. So I want to give you permission to not look at this like an on and off switch. It is just as much as you can. Now here's a little twist in looking at this, the opportunity to peel this away later at a time. If you can ease how you feel about the big injustice, even if it's just a little tiny bit, you may find that the day-to-day injustices bother you less. I like to call this hangover resentment. I just made that up a couple days ago. Hangover resentment. If you're unresolved over here in this really big way, you're going to hold the whole world accountable for that injustice. So it's like you're subconsciously walking around waiting for ways to be offended, looking for tiny little ways that you can assert yourself over here, where really it's that big injustice that you're holding the whole world accountable for. Hangover resentment. Any little bit that we can soften helps us in the day-to-day, helps us ease those day-to-day injustices that we might get really, really angry about. It's not really about those, it's about the larger picture. Another great reason to peel away at a later time. Have you heard of Q-tip? Quit taking it personally. That's related to that hangover resentment. Quit taking it personally. Allowing another little layer of forgiveness at a time helps us to quit taking it all so personally. The more you flex your forgiveness muscle, the stronger it gets. Yes, I don't think that this is a one-off sort of deal. I think it's a perfect example, Lori, of thinking of it like a muscle. This is something that we come back to, layer at a time, muscle fiber at a time that we're building up. I'm almost done, but I wanted to share some really neat tools for you to do your own research, look for your own resources. So I'm going to share some of them. One of the neatest forgiveness tools that I have been introduced to, I found through a book that I read called Happy for No Reason. This is by Marcy Shimoff, and I'm going to come back to her also. And then the same concept came back when I was working on this big thing to forgive with another of my coaches several years ago. This is called the Hawaiian forgiveness process. Tell me if you've heard of it. I'm going to try to pronounce it. It is Ho'oponopono. I think I got that. Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian forgiveness process. This centers around taking total responsibility. So I mentioned earlier, starting small and maybe even taking 10% responsibility. Here's a real radical concept of total responsibility. It's a challenging one, and I will post in the links a particular article that I found that demonstrated this process beautifully for those of you who are curious. Total responsibility is super challenging. It's basically that there's no such thing as out there. There's nothing out there. Everything exists as thoughts inside our own minds. And when I was doing this research, I'll put in this little tidbit that this is a nod to solipsism. Hadn't heard that word before. Solipsism. So if you want to look that up in your own recreational time, this is, I'm not going to go into that here, but if you look it up, you introverts will love it. You extroverts will probably panic. That's solipsism. This idea of total responsibility. And Ho'oponopono is a process of repeating these phrases to yourself. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Even just saying that out loud, I feel a little shift. Now, this is a way cooler method than I have time to go into. I will share this particular link to this article that I found that I loved how this described it. And there is research backing it up. For those of you science-minded folk, there's research backing up the Hawaiian forgiveness method. It's a pretty neat thing. Again, this is an ongoing process. This is not something that you do just once, and repeating those phrases speaks to the layers that I mentioned. I'm going to come back to Marcy Shimoff, and I will share a link of hers also, where I found that she details a forgiveness process that was beautiful. So I'm going to come back to that, and I will share that resource, that link later to Marcy Shimoff's forgiveness process. Really, really neat. The work of Byron Katie. For those of you who have heard of her, she's super helpful with forgiveness. She's got to be the queen of the reframe. That's another resource. Now, if there's anyone out there who feels ready to let go of an infraction but is afraid to go it alone, reach out. What so often happens is that we get stuck in the tape loop, where we replay the incident over and over, and it causes repeated emotional trauma each time we hash over it. There is an exercise that I do with clients that helps break that memory cycle, and it is kind of fun. If you are interested, holler. I'd be happy to work with you on that. I also offer a powerful guided meditation that is a great exercise to repeat and soften away those layers. A couple more resources for further support. I highly recommend considering EMDR. Really neat process. Now, this has to be done well. Not everyone does it equally. This is a certification. You can find a good EMDR therapist, and I'd be happy to mention a few for those of you who are local. But EMDR is a really neat consideration. Now, I'm going to wrap to a close. I will come back to any comments posted after the fact. In between, coming back, commenting, watching the replay, I will just suggest compassion, compassion, compassion for yourself as the most important takeaway Peel away those layers at a time when you are ready. Thank you very, very much for watching. Have a great day. Love you guys. Bye.